Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining the Second Mile Fellowship Daily Devotion. We are in Genesis chapter 43 and chapter 44 today. We're here at Mobile Command once again as we look at these chapters here together. I have chapter 43 broken down into two sections. The first 14 verses, I have that titled Judah Persuades Jacob. Now, as you go down through these verses, you see that they had bought some corn in Egypt, but it wasn't enough, and so they needed more. Jacob is saying, hey, we need to go down again, and Judah speaks up. Now, Judah, again, is the fourth born of Jacob. You have Reuben, you have Simeon, you have Levi, and then you have Judah. Judah speaks up, and he says this in verse number 4 and 5. He says, if thou wilt send our brother with us, we will go down and buy thee food. He says, but if thou wilt not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, ye shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. Judah here is telling Jacob, he says, look, we have an ultimatum here. We either can take Benjamin down there and we can get food, or we're not going. Because he knew that what Joseph said, and Joseph said, don't come back here unless you bring your brother with you. So here we see Judah stepping into the leadership role. And he finally convinces Jacob to let him go down in these first 14 verses. And as he does that, he makes this statement. And he says in verse number 9, I will be surety for him. He is making it sure. He is guaranteeing that he'll bring him back. He says, I will be surety for him. Of my hand shalt thou require him. If I bring him not unto thee and set him before thee, then let me bear the blame forever. He convinces him. And the reason he convinces him is because Judah has now proved himself to be trustworthy. Couldn't trust Reuben. Simeon and Levi were wicked brethren. Couldn't trust them. But Judah standing up, standing in the gap, he trusted Judah to do this. Now, verses 15 through 34, they make the trek down there. They take Benjamin with them. Simeon, as you remember, is still in prison. He's still in Egypt. I don't know how long he's been there, but he's been there long enough to be there a while for them to eat through the food in which they took the first time and not have any more. Verse 15 through 34 have that title, Joseph entertains his brothers. So as the brothers come down there, you see several things taking place. And as they get down there, they begin to say, hey, we came down here before, and when we went back, we saw that not only we had food, but we had all of our money too. And so we've brought that money back, It was a mistake, surely. So we've got that money, and then we have more money to buy more food. And you see Joseph in verse number 23. He says, peace be to you. Fear not, your God and the God of your father hath given you treasure in your sacks. Once again, we see Joseph pointing the finger to God, giving God the glory. We have seen this time and again in the life of Joseph. You don't hear Joseph murmuring and complaining when things are going bad, but whenever there's credit to be given, he's always pointing the finger to God. He did it with Pharaoh. He's now doing it unto his brethren. He brings Simeon back out unto them, brings him into Joseph's house, and they began to set a feast down before them. Now, I want to show you something that really pricked my heart. I think God showed me something fantastic. And now this may be nothing to you. You may have seen this 100 times before, and this is old news to you. It was new news to me, okay? We get down here to verse number 34, and as Joseph sets all of his brethren in place, from the eldest to the youngest, we see that he gives unto his brethren messes. He gives them portions. But then in verse number 34, it says, but Benjamin's mess was 5 times so much as any of theirs. Now, I always thought that this was maybe because Benjamin was Joseph's full brother, and he loved Benjamin, had a sort of, a special bond to him, and so therefore he was showing him favoritism. But that's not it. This is the setup. Joseph is demonstrating favoritism unto Benjamin in the sight of all of his brethren. Why? Because he wants to see how his brethren react to what's coming in the next chapter. Man, it just really blew my mind when I thought of that, when God showed me that. And I think it's just really an interesting thing. And we can see how things have progressed, not only for Joseph and for Judah, but for all of his brethren, as we see the events of chapter 44 lay out. Now, in chapter 44, I have that into two sections here. And the first, I forgot to give a title to the first. How about we call it the setup? There you go. How's that? The setup. We get down here, and he tells his servant there in verse number 1, hey, give them all the food that they can carry, put their money in their sack, but then also take my cup and put it in the youngest, put it in Benjamin's sack. And he tells them what to say when they overtake them. And so that's what they do. They go to overtake the brethren, and as they reach Joseph's brethren, as they're leaving, they've had their bellies full, they've really been blessed, they've got all their family back together, and all of a sudden Pharaoh's men catch up to him, and they begin accusing him. Why have you done this? Our Lord has shown you good, and you've treated him evil. And they said, man, we've not done anything. Whosoever has done this thing, let him die the death, and we'll all be servants, because they were all convinced that no one had done anything. Well, as you continue down through there, you see some interesting things. In that it says in verse number 10, and pay special attention to this. And he said, now also let it be according unto your words. He with whom it is shall be found shall be my servant, and ye shall be blameless. The servant is telling all of his brothers, hey, whoever has this, that one's going to be my servant, and no guilt is upon all of you. You can all go free, because again, this is a continuation of the setup. Joseph showed Benjamin favoritism in that meal when he set 5 messes down in front of Benjamin. Here it is, the youngest, and he's being treated like he is better than all of the others. And now, here it is. This is crunch time. This is decision time. They can do to Benjamin exactly what they did to Joseph, or they can do something different. Because Benjamin is going to be the one guilty. And as the servant said, he said, man, this will be his servant, and all of you can go free. So, what do? Verse number 13. Then they rent their clothes, and laded every man his ass, and returned to the city. They didn't do Benjamin like they did Joseph. They were willing to sacrifice now. They weren't willing to throw Benjamin away like they threw Joseph away. See, Joseph is seeing where the hearts of their brethren truly are. And so they all go back and they get to Judah's house. And in verses 14 through 34, and that's the remainder of the chapter, I have this titled, Judah's Willingness to Sacrifice. And I want to point up in this portion of the lesson, you'll see a link at the top. I did a study on Judah. It's really a good study. Judah is a very important man throughout the Old Testament, throughout the lineage of Jacob, the lineage of David, the lineage of Jesus. And this chapter, it about brought me to tears once again as I began reading through what Judah had said unto Joseph. Again, unbeknownst, he didn't know it was Joseph, but he begins to just give him his heart, and he tells him the truth, and he says, man, we have a father, and he had one son, and he's gone now, but this man Benjamin, this youngest one, he says, if I do not bring him back, if I don't bring him back, it's going to bring his gray hairs down upon his head. He's going to die of grief. And then we get down to verse number 33, and this is the verse that I picture Judah in my mind, standing before Pharaoh, and all of his brothers with their clothes rent, weeping sore, and Benjamin probably scared to death. And here it is, Judah, the leader, And he looks up at this man and he says these words in verse number 33. After he has poured out his heart, he says, now therefore, he said, I pray thee, let thy servant abide instead of the lad, a bondman to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brethren. Judah is willing to trade places with Benjamin. It's not anymore that they're selfish and jealous like they were of Joseph and willing to cast him out, willing to discard him like trash and sell him like a slave. But now Judah is a beautiful picture of Jesus, and that he's willing to take the place of the one who is found guilty. He says, let me abide, thy servant. Let him go with his brethren. Man, what a beautiful picture that we see of Jesus in Genesis chapter 44 by the name of the man Judah. And like I said, I encourage you, if you haven't looked at that study, I'll link that in the top of this. And I encourage you, of course, to go back and look at the character study of Judah. And it's just really, I love this passage of Scripture. I truly do. It's one of my favorite in the story of Joseph and certainly in the life of Judah. I hope that you will take time and meditate upon it and maybe picture these images in your mind as I do and let them impact you in the same way. Because these were real men, real stories. These aren't fables. They weren't made up. There was a man named Judah who stood before a man by the name of Joseph who he saw as the nigh unto Pharaoh in Egypt, and he was willing to give his life for the little brother. So that's going to be our study tonight, Genesis chapters 43 and chapter 44. I hope that this has been a help and blessing unto you, and Lord willing, we will see you tomorrow.